What's good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And this one will break down what's going on with the overall market and talk about some very interesting price action on Tesla, SPY, the QQQ, and etc. And break down some important tickers, talk about some important levels. But before I do anything like that, let me just mention a couple of things. I'm firstly not a financial planner, so make sure you take none of this as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Weeble link, which is down below and in the description. The offer ends very soon. Deposit any amount of money, and you're guaranteed up to 12 free stocks. Anyways, let's talk about the market, what's going on with Tesla, and etc. Tesla got a very, very nice looking bounce today. Basically, in my video from the morning, I told you that we could see some downside if we broke below our support at this 264 to 265 area, so 264.5 specifically. And we did break below, and we saw Tesla just tank today, right? So I did call this move right, the whole gap up and drop in the market, but intraday, I couldn't have seen this coming. I don't think I could have predicted this yesterday. But intraday, we got a very, very nice bounce then because lots of buyers started to step in. And Tesla started to pump as a result of that. So, yes, it gapped up and then dropped, but then we got an intraday bounce, which is very nice on Tesla. If you look at Tesla, what happened was they dumped it really hard. They smacked it down so they could start buying and buying and buying those shares up. We saw over a 2.5 million order that came out. We saw more and more buyers stepping in with high volume. It was dropping on high volume and finally got the bounce off 255. That was our magic zone. My levels on Tesla were showing this basically like a break below 260. You're going to be watching 257.74. And below that, we had 255.7. It ended up actually bouncing up 255.8. Then Tesla started going up, hit 262.5, rejected off of it, getting a back test at 260. And then this thing was done. It just kept going and going. The buyers came back, the bulls returned, and Tesla's showing some nice strength. So Tesla's currently at 266. If we continue to break out and we break this high right here around like 267.5, around that area, we have some resistance in this 268 zone, this entire zone right here, which is going to be very, very tight for Tesla. If it breaks 268, 270, 272, and 275 are going to be our next resistance zones. They're all very possible to be reached if it does break out. For now, it's holding up quite decently in the 266s. If it breaks below 266, the next major support is going to be at 265. Below that, you're going to be watching 263.64 for the 50 EMA, and then we have 262.5 below that. So you're going to be watching these levels very carefully. So far, it's holding up quite nicely. So watch it for Tesla. We got some good buyers. So it is starting to turn into a very, very different stock with different price action compared to yesterday and earlier today. Because remember, yesterday, we didn't really get any signals of the bounce. If you look at Tesla, it just straight up just tanked all day. It just went down and down and down. Yet going into yesterday, you could see how it was just dropping. And then for today, it dropped for the first few hours before getting a really nice bounce. And now Tesla's starting to see good buyers, looking quite decent. Now for SPY, we're going to talk about this one. SPY is getting very tight, basically forming a potential wedge. But the thing about it is it's trying to break to the upside, getting some buyers. Now I told you that if SPY broke below 454, you're going to be watching a test of 453.5. If we got a break below that area, especially 453, it's going to come all the way down to fill this gap at the 452s. And that's what happened, right? We sort of gapped up like I was predicting, then we came right back down. That's what I predicted yesterday, but I didn't know exactly how the price action would turn out depending on the intraday, changes and contingencies. And intraday, while the market was dropping, yes, it was looking weak, but we formed a nice double bottom. Then we saw a lot of buyers stepping in again. And then what happened was on the options chain for SPY, we saw a new adjustment that was made. We saw a lot of individuals buying the 454 strike on SPY. That's the next important level. We saw high volume on that and lots of buying of that strike. So market makers are going to be watching that area. And that's part of why the market's pumping the way it is, because that's a strike of interest. And now the question that comes to mind is, how much higher could we go? So we're currently at 454 right now. If it keeps breaking out, we have resistance at 454.75 to 455. Break 455, and this thing could go all the way up to 456, which is where we have a lot of strikes over there. But do I think that's going to happen right now? Looking at the trend, it looks a little less likely because the market's once again kind of like stagnating a bit. But I wouldn't rule out numbers like this because we do have resistance in the 454.75 to 455 area. And for support, so let's just say it does break down, you're going to be watching 453.5. That's going to be our major support zone. If that fails us, there's 452.69 as the next major support. Right, this was a historical zone, this yellow line right here. This was a historical support on SPY for a very, very long time, going many, many months back. And this was acting as resistance to us. We got lots of rejections too. So this historical level came back. We basically broke down, got a double bottom at 452, came right back up to 454, got a back test of the critical level, then we bounced after that. So you're going to be watching the support, and below that we have 452. So watch these levels very carefully. You could see how the market's reacting. You could see how it's hitting this resistance, and like it's still reacting to it, if anything. So watch these levels. I don't expect it to fly insanely high or even like drop insanely hard. It's looking like it's getting very tight. It may stay in this range for an extended period of time, but at the end of the day, there could be a push up at the very end to end basically the day. Because of the options chain, once again, there are lots of puts expiring, and simultaneously, you can't forget about the new strikes, the new volume that came to them. So it's worth noting that's how the market ended up moving. Uh, Finally, for the QQQ, same thing as SPY. It's basically getting very tight. If you're bullish, you want to see it break above 378.34. This is the 200 EMA. If it breaks that, 379, then 380 are going to come. If it breaks 380, 382 becomes possible. If it breaks down, watch 377, 377 flat. 377.44 is what I meant, then 377 flat. And then below that, if it breaks below that area, there's some support at 376.5, and then we have 375.8. Now, here's the thing about it. We basically gapped up and then we dumped, which is the move I called yesterday. But I wasn't able to call the intraday like price action after that. We did get a bounce, a small one so far. But the thing about this is, if we broke the low of the day, and I called this out in the morning, if we broke the low from yesterday, 375 flat, if we broke that, it's going to come all the way down to 373. We so far have not done that. We formed a double bottom right there. So it's trying to form this base just around this area. So this is very important to know. So this is another level which ended up forming. So we're going to be watching this carefully if it does end up breaking down. But so far it's holding up quite decently. And I do anticipate it's going to hold up for the rest of the day, not really tank too hard. For Nvidia, this once again got a very nice bounce. It came all the way down to our target of 444. I told you yesterday, if Nvidia broke our critical support at 450, you're going to be watching 444. This was the level right here. And that is almost exactly where Nvidia bounced off of. Now, after it got this bounce off 444, it's about to test the 200 EMA. 455 is going to be our resistance zone right now, very close to that area. Specifically 454.45 around that area too. It's getting close to almost 455, which has been a historical level because this is where we had our previous support during the pre-market, which is now going to act as resistance. This 454.45 to 455 area, basically in the mid 455s. And then going forward, if it breaks above that, if it manages to break this 455 area, it could fly all the way up to 460. It is getting a nice bounce, showing some strength, and I'm very excited for what's going to come later on to it. So we're going to be watching this 455 zone. If it breaks below it, we have a 452.5 and then 450 as our supports. Below that, once again, we're also going to watch like 448 and 444. I don't see it dropping that hard. I think it's going to try to hold in this range for the majority of the day. A break above 455, and you're going to be watching this wick right here, this previous high. So like where is it? It's right about here at about 456.9, like around this level. If that breaks, then 460 becomes a possibility. For Aapl, okay, Aapl was a little weaker than before. It actually broke below 192.5. So that's the thing that's like kind of slowing the market down a little bit. If this thing broke out just like Tesla, the market could have pumped. But Apple's looking a little weak right now. Apple's continuing to downtrend. It actually broke below 192.5. Then it came right back up above it, hitting 192 during that time. So there's a little bit of weakness on Aapl right now. And I'm just calling this out because this is what's slowing the market down a bit. In my opinion, if Aapl continues to break down, you're going to be watching 192.5 and 192 as its support. I don't really think it's going to break this today. As for resistance, you're going to be watching 193.33, 193.5, and 194 as our resistance levels. Aapl, unfortunately, it's on a downtrend. It's not as strong. And for that reason, once again, it's kind of lagging behind compared to like other stocks out there. I want to see Aapl just at least try to hold up for the remainder of the day and hopefully get some good volume going into next week. So watch these levels very carefully as we move forward. Microsoft is going to be on my eyes because it got a very, very nice bounce at the zone I called out. I told you all this zone right here. Let me show you where it was. This imbalance at 344 around there. This was the level I was calling on Microsoft. And it was right here, this imbalance at around 344. That's exactly where the low was on Microsoft. So it's very close to that low. Once it hits it, I think it came very close to it. It doesn't really matter at this point. It's close enough. In the 344s, that may be close to where the bottom is, maybe a little lower, somewhere around there. It's getting very close to its bottom because I think Microsoft is going to blast off next week. It's also forming like this wedge right here. You can actually draw it out quite nicely. This nice looking wedge, just like this. I'm going to do this very roughly, by the way, so apologize if it's not perfect, but you understand my point. It's looking quite nice for a setup for next week. Why? Because we have earnings next week from Microsoft, and Microsoft historically has a tendency of beating on earnings. So we could be seeing a potential breakout going into next week from a bullish falling wedge. It may start breaking to the upside. It's going to be very exciting. And once again, historically, Microsoft tends to do very well for earnings. Even this earnings, in my opinion, should be pretty good for them. I'm not as confident about like Apple and Meta and a couple of others, and like Amazon, definitely not. I'm not really confident about those, but I am pretty confident Microsoft's going to do better than them, at least to do decently. So there's a good chance to make it a bullish breakout from this falling wedge. Just wanted to call that out. And AMD, let's see what's going on with this. 109 was one of the zones we had on AMD, 107, 109, and etc. Bounced off 109. What happened to my trend line? I had a trend line that was drawn down here. It may have gone deleted somehow. This line right here, 109 then 107 were our zones on AMD. Not sure what happened. I'm going to adjust these later on, but I just wanted to call this out. These were the zones we were watching for, and now that it got this bounce, we're going to be watching this level right here. We have this resistance right about here, 112.5, basically the 112 area. That's where our next resistance level is right here, looking at this chart, because this is where we saw a lot of chop. And we have this imbalance right here around this like 115 area as the next important zone. So here's some zones on AMD to just look out for. I mean, if it continues to break out above 112, 114.35 to 115 become possible. I think it's just going to chop around for the majority of the day, not really do too much more. And for Amazon, we got a nice breakout. From what I remember, we actually came down to 128. I called out 128 on Amazon yesterday. That was the low of the day, but I didn't really call out a nice bounce off of it or anything like that. I wasn't really focused on that because I was just looking at the first move. And we got a nice bounce off 128. And now it's starting to uptrend a little bit. So we're going to be watching 130. If it manages to keep breaking out, it's going to be watching 131.43. So when it comes to my predictions, I once again can't always call the intraday stuff. So I wasn't 100% right about everything. I just want to make that clear. I don't want to sound like I'm showing off when I say, I called some levels. I did call some of them, but at the same time, I couldn't call all the intraday bounces. But we did get them, and it did bounce off critical zones that I mentioned at the very least. So anyways, when it comes to Amazon, watch 131. If it manages to break above this 130 area, and then 132 is the next resistance after that. 131.5, then 132. It's looking like it's trying to like test this like 130.5 area first. Break below that, then 128 is possible. Meta was looking weak. We were talking about this on Meta. It actually went lower than I expected. I was thinking that it would test like 300 if that broke. 295 could come. Instead, it's at 295. It actually broke below 291, so it's looking very weak now compared to the 4-hour time frame. It actually broke below our major support at the 50 EMA, so it's looking a little weak. Let's see where it tries to base. I think the low of the day should be in for Meta. We're going to be watching this 195 zone. If it gets above it, watch 198, 300, and 303, and then 304.43 as our resistances. For support, watch 295 as support, 292.5, 291.2, and then 290. All right, guys, that's what I have for this video. I went over a lot. Thank you for listening. Hope you guys enjoyed everything I had to offer intraday, and we will just watch these levels until the market closes. Thank you. Have a good one, and I'll see you guys for the final video of the day. Market to the moon, and peace out.